our friends and our colleagues, a very warm welcome from a little sunnyish UK, I have to say, which is a bit of a change with the weather that we have in this country. So it's really good to be able to see you all. And we had such a great session with your other colleagues last week, so we're really excited to be able to deliver this second webinar on leadership and management within a youth work environment. Just going to give you a bit of an introduction. And we're going to look obviously at some of the Zoom housekeeping and an overview of the session. So first of all, introduction. So my name is Debbie Taras. I am the Principal Youth Work Specialist for the National Youth Agency. Not wanting to give away my age much, but I have over 25 to 27 years experience of being a youth work practitioner and also leading in management, managing youth and community projects across the UK. In particular, my specialism is around domestic violence, as well as lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender, and also some elements of substance misuse. So it's really good to see you all. I'm going to pass you across to my colleague, Pete Crosley, for him to introduce himself.
Hi, thanks Debs. I'm Pete Crossley. I'm new to the National Youth Agency this year. My background is I've just spent the last 12 years as a senior lecturer at one of the universities up in the northwest of England, teaching on the youth and community work course, part of which was teaching management and leadership to undergraduate and postgraduate students. And prior to that, I worked with the YMCA National Council, delivering the young offender Partnerships in Prisons project that ran for a number of years.
Thanks, Pete. So just a bit of housekeeping today. We are obviously all on Zoom at the moment, and for some of us this is quite alien. I think as youth workers we're getting to grips with digital technology and how we deliver youth work, particularly on a digital platform. The session today will be recorded, just to say that, and that obviously hopefully will be available to you. We have put you all onto mute, and we'd ask you, we can't unmute you, we're not able to do that under our UK laws, we can't do that. But what we will be asking is that when we put you into breakout rooms, we will ask you to have a spokesperson, and that person can unmute themselves to be able to give feedback within those breakout rooms. There is a chat which you will see on your screen. Please feel free to put any questions that you may have in there. As well as there will be time obviously for us to have some of those conversations and some of those really good narratives and discussions as we move along. Pete and I are both practitioners, but we are very much about enabling you as youth workers to be able to have some of those really good conversations, not just with each other, but also with us as well. And that's what we find that we can learn more, I think, when we talk and we have those discussions with each other. If anybody drops out at all, because I don't know about you, but in terms of IT and in regards to the internet, just come back on again on that link, and Stephen, who is our amazing IT guy in the background, will bring you back in again on the waiting room. So please don't feel as though once if your internet does drop, you can actually come back on again. So I think that is it, unless I've missed anything else, Pete. I think are we good to go? I'll go through the learning up bit. Great. Okay, so just bear with me. Okay, so in terms of the session today, we've got 3 key learning outcomes that we would like to be able to deliver in this session. The first one is we want to explore some of the theories which underpin leadership and management. And with that, we know that across the globe there are various theories, but we've highlighted a few key ones that we think will be much more beneficial to youth workers in practice. We'd also like to examine perhaps the difference in that discourse between what is management and what is leadership. And we're going to give you the opportunity to actually discuss that and what does that really mean for us as youth workers, but in particular about what does that mean actually moving forward, and especially as for yourselves as youth workers, a practice is developing into that professional arena. And also finally, as youth workers, you know, there is a necessity and what underpins our core practices around that reflective practice. So allowing and enabling us to reflect on how the organisation develops. So that's in terms of your organisation, whether that be a small grassroots or that could be a much bigger organisation. But how does that then develop and grow managers? You know, how do we perhaps have organic managers and leaders within a youth work environment? So we're hoping that by the end of this session today, we would have been able to actually explore these learning outcomes. Okay, Over to you, Pete.
Okay, thanks, Debs. Just in terms of if you were studying management leadership over in one of a British university, this chap, John Ord, he's an associate professor at Plymouth University, and he's quite prolific in his writings on management and leadership in youth work. And in this book, Critical Issues in Youth Work Management, he talks about sort of management really is quite new to the profession of youth work. Normally, or historically, you would associate the term management with businesses rather than youth work provision, which is less hierarchical, less maybe about power. And I suppose he kind of says that the history of management has normally been a more experienced practitioner would actually be supporting the more novice worker, the less experienced worker, and the profession wouldn't necessarily need a manager at the helm of the organisation. And he talks about at great length, really. Therefore, there's a bit of a danger in assuming that youth work needs managing, and talks about the danger of managerialism, and kind of says that it's sort of value laden, and we shouldn't walk blindly in assuming that everything needs to be managed. I suppose what he means by that is this. The youth work profession is more egalitarian, it's more about empowerment, it's more about participation and the sharing of power, rather than having what might historically be deemed a hierarchical sort of management structure, and just kind of explores that. But he also talks about that the growth in management actually coincides with a lot of the work being funded through central government. So historically, over in Britain, the youth work has its history within the voluntary sector, where people weren't necessarily professionally trained, but actually decided to do good work. So you have organisations like the YMCA, like Barnardo's, that again decided to work with young people who were in poverty to help them grow and become active citizens. So basically kind of saying that the only or one of the key reasons is that we need to be aware of that we need management is when the government actually starts to fund some of the work, that they demand targets, and just really explores that is not necessarily in itself a problem, but it is value laden. Can I have the next slide, Debs, please?
Yeah.
What he does also talk about is youth workers who every first year student who kind of joined our course would be saying, oh, I don't want to be a manager. There's something about not wanting to move over to the dark side, that really there was something. I always want to be a face-to-face practitioner. I don't want to lose my passion. I don't want to lose that direct contact with young people, as though managers don't have passion, as though managers don't have access directly to young people. But he sort of raises this issue that it seems a bit more sort of palatable for youth workers, youth work practitioners, to talk about management moving into leadership. We seem much more happy to be leading organisations rather than managing them. There's something that is a bit more transformational, a bit more ethical about leadership. And again, just one last point, he talks about the issue that a lot of cash is spent on leadership courses, on there's a whole host of degrees, professional courses in management and leadership, and kind of raises the point that it's an old statistic now, but back in 1990, 36 to 60 billion pounds was spent annually on management and leadership, but actually there's not been a lot of research into the purpose of it. And again, Ord raises this question of we shouldn't just assume that management is a good thing in itself, and ask those basic questions. Do we need managing? What needs management? Or do we need leading? And what needs leadership? Because leaders need followers. Some always need to be followers, so youth workers, followers or leaders. And again, you could argue it's a bit of an academic ivory tower, but it's an interesting start maybe to consider in our break rooms, I think.
Great. Okay, so in true youth work style, we're now going to pass across to you guys. What we're going to do here is we're going to actually have breakout rooms and a discussion. And what we're going to ask is that when you get into your breakout rooms, you will get a message that will come through in a minute that will actually be asking you a request for you to actually join the breakout room. Don't do that just yet. And that will be coming in a few minutes on your screen. But actually what we actually want for you to be able to think about is, first of all, most importantly, choose a facilitator. We won't be coming into those rooms. So it's going to be quite quick that you'll have to choose a facilitator, or as we like to say, a volunteer who perhaps can facilitate your discussions, and then maybe also the spokesperson to feedback. So building on what Pete's just said there about, let's think about what this means to you personally. What does leadership mean to you? Both as a person, but more importantly as a youth work practitioner, and then thinking about actually, well, then what does management mean to you? I mean, is there a difference? Do you feel as that they're the same, or that there may be some distinction? But it's about what that means to you. And then as a group, this is the tricky bit, actually agree a statement to describe each one. We're going to give you 10 minutes to do that. Like I said, you'll start to get a message up now. Please go onto your chats, rooms, please introduce each other. Agree a facilitator and a spokesperson, and you'll get a lovely little message that will come up and tell you when your 10 minutes is nearly up, and then we'll come back into the room. Thank you. From a youth work perspective, but we wanted to put that in because we just thought that may enable us to actually have some conversations perhaps within your groups about what we perceive as a leader, really, and we just thought that would be interesting. Nelson Mandela, very similar to what you said, the other group, very much in terms of that leader. Not only did he inspire in terms of from Africa, but I think he inspired a complete global revolution, really, in terms of about how we actually look at people, in terms of how they lead, how they inspire, and how they support a generation to actually be able to especially from that value base. So very similar in terms of looking at rather than actually managing. And Queen Elizabeth. Interesting because obviously she is currently the leader of the Commonwealth, but also what the discussions perhaps, and it's very interesting, again, very similar to the last group in terms of managing as well, because not only is she leading in terms of as us as a Commonwealth and across the world, but also she has to also possibly manage her family as well. And I think for those of you who do have a family, and quite a diverse family as well, I think sometimes you do feel as though you have to bring in all your management skills to do that. And obviously for the Queen, sometimes that is very much in a public arena, but how she manages that and how she possibly manages her household and manages some of the issues that come forward, perhaps then do link into some of her leadership styles and how she presents herself and how she inspires, and how she is a very much a positive role model. And especially for women as well. So I don't know if anybody wants to come in at any time. We're open to people to make any comments. It would be interesting, or happy for you not to. That's fine. Please unmute yourself if you'd like to say anything. If you don't agree with me, that's absolutely fine. That's good. It's be interesting to get any comments.
Hi, good morning. This
Hi.
is Belgrave.
Hi, Belgrave.
Hi. I said that Queen Elizabeth was a great manager, not leaving off her leadership in the Commonwealth. In fact, I may go as far as probably to say she's a great world leader. But I put manager because I believe that her focus was in bringing the team together and appointing leaders, so to speak, on various levels, so that the results that she sought in terms of the development of the Commonwealth, development of the world and world economy, I think she was able to pull these people together to get that result. That's why I said for her, a manager.
That's interesting. Yeah, and I think
yeah,
you very much talk about actually. So that's kind of like more of a linear model in terms of managers can actually manage leaders.
Right.
which is really interesting, isn't it?
Yes,
Yes.
interesting. And I said pretty much the same for Nelson Mandela. Now, Nelson Mandela, we know him as a leader, and because of his inspiration. But I believe that Nelson Mandela, when he started off as an attorney, I believe it was more managerial focus and perspectives. And then later on, because of the situation, because of what had unfolded, he really grasped the role of leadership. Some history of him that I recall was that his father, or maybe his grandfather, was responsible for the history of the clan. And therefore, that would have put him in position to be the manager in that sense, because the history is it's and it was an oral history, and that had to be kept. That had to be well kept. And in that sense, I said leadership. But after what has transpired, I see that I said leadership was the overarching thing with Nelson.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that. Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Okay. Anybody else before we move on? You okay? Yeah. Right. So I'm still not finished with you all. I've still got for you all to do a little task, and you're going to go into different breakout rooms now. So we've talked about trying to do a statement of what the difference is between perhaps leadership and management, or what that means to you. And again, like Pete said, you've actually commented on that, but I just want us to explore this in a bit more detail. And if we really want to kind of, to use a term for where I come from, drill down into those key skills and those attributes of what makes a good manager. You know, what does good look like? For us as youth work practitioners, what would we, if we are obviously developing in terms of becoming a manager, or perhaps we want to have a good manager, what would we look for, or what would we want to be? And the same is with the key skills and attributes of a good leader. We're talking about, obviously, in terms of the vision, and particularly from Grenada in terms of their youth work vision, and about actually how do we then grow some of these, some managers and some leaders, and look at very much from that organic perspective. So what I'm going to ask to do is that you're going to go into breakout rooms, and I want you to think about these key discussion points. So what are the key skills and attributes of a good manager, and what are the key skills and attributes of a good leader? Again, you have 10 minutes to discuss this. Please again choose a facilitator, a spokesperson. In the true spirit of democracy, it may be nice if you choose somebody else to be a spokesperson, but they may like that, so that's fine. We shall leave that completely up to you. When you do come back, we may just ask you just to give us just a few, so that allows everybody to be able to talk, and we may find some similarities in terms of those key skills and attributes. So you should be going into your breakout rooms any moment now. Okay, everybody back. Thank you very much. I hope that the last 10 minutes enabled you to talk as a group, and to look at what we'd asked with the key questions, which were, first of all, what were the key skills and attributes of a good manager, and secondly, what are the key skills and attributes of a good leader. One of the questions that I've got at the end is, do youth services need leading or managing? And I'd like to ask that question separately once we've had some of that feedback. So I'm just wondering whether or not I could have the first spokesperson, and I'm just going to ask you just to give me perhaps one or two from each, and then we can then continue that with the rest of the breakout group. So would somebody like to start? Do I have a willing volunteer?
Yes, you do.
Oh, lovely. Who's that? Is that Jessel?
Yes, it is. And
hi, Jessel.
And she's representing Group 5.
Group 5, great.
So for leaders, we say good listening skills and patient. For managers, they need to be organized and have vision. And because we're in the Caribbean territory whereby politics have a big play, we think that a manager should be political sensor oriented also. But
That's
we
a really
also
good
find
point.
some overlap, if you may permit me, between leaders and managers. They both should be good timekeepers and speakers in order to communicate to the audience.
Thank you very much for that.
Welcome.
Some really key things there. Thank you. Thanks for that, Justin. Thanks for going first. Appreciate that. Who would like to be next?
Good day.
Hi, Brent.
Yes, Brent from Grenada.
Hi, Brent.
Group 2.
Group 2.
We spoke about a good manager is basically knowing how to be in command. All right. He or she must be able to give directive or make that judgment call. All right. While a good leader would be able to see the talents in the members and delegate certain responsibilities to help empower them so that they can also become good leaders or managers themselves.
That's a really good point. See the talents. Thank you for that, Brent. Who would like to go next? That was
Hi.
Sherma?
Hi. Sherma. Good.
Yep. Hi,
Good
Sherma.
day. Good morning. Hi. So with my group, we thought that a good manager should display good decision-making skills and good interpersonal skills. With good interpersonal skills would come good listening skills, good communication skills, good the ability to make decisions and so forth. With a good leader, Keziah.
Okay, good morning again.
Hi,
For good
Keziah.
leader skills, hello, we have motivational skills since you need to be able to inspire others. And we also had empathetic skills. And notice we said empathy and not sympathy, because with empathy, you have to put yourself in the shoes of others. So that was 2 out of the many that we had.
That's interesting. Thank you. Good to see that you've got teamwork there, the two of you together feeding back. Thank you for that. Great.
Welcome.
Okay. Who's next?
Next.
Hi.
Jessie?
Yes.
Hi, Jessie.
Hi. For a good manager, we had that the person should be able to delegate tasks to persons and not micromanage. We also had for both, we had effective communicator. Assertiveness was one of the areas, one of the skills we thought it should be assertive, be organized, as well as be able to plan effectively. For a leader, we had that the person need to be a good motivator, a good mentor. They also need to be trustworthy, honest, and empathetic.
Empathetic again, that's great. Thank you for that, Jessie. Who's next?
All right, this is Yudi for group 4.
Hi, Yudi.
Hi, from Grenada. Our group had people from Grenada and St. Vincent. So, I mean, a lot of people would have listed most of the things that we have said, but I'll try to say things that persons didn't really touch on. We said that a manager should have good problem-solving skills, and they should be knowledgeable in their field area and have awareness of their environment. We also said that a leader should have emotional intelligence and the leader and good conflict resolution skills.
Great.
Yeah.
Really key. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have one more? Or have we got everybody?
Oh, yes, there's one more.
Yes, I thought there was, yeah.
Trying to look for those that weren't mentioned. Okay, on the management,
yeah,
we thought about listening skills. A manager should be able to listen and listen actively.
Okay.
And we also thought the manager should also be a teacher, because sometimes we have to demonstrate certain things to persons so that they can understand. Under the leadership, for something that was not mentioned, we spoke about value system. We thought that the leaders should have a strong value system as well as they should be disciplined and network. They should have a strong network system where they can, you know, harness or tap into certain relationships and so to make things work more effectively.
Thank you for that. Thank you. I think, have we covered everybody now? I've not missed out any groups. No, I think that's great. Thank you everybody for your feedback, and I think certainly it certainly feeds into what Pete was talking about before in terms of when he looked at those 3 distinct models, and certainly around some of those overlapping skills and attributes that we would want to see either in good leaders or good managers, but also perhaps what we would want to aspire to as well. And I think just picking up on what Ladona's group had talked about you know, a strong network for a leader. You know, we're talking about maybe those skills as to actually to be quite strategic. And if we're talking about what you said before about maybe having a vision and being able to lead that team or to lead that organisation, but at the same time looking at certainly as those managements. And I really like the thought of perhaps managers not necessarily being teachers, but also being able to demonstrate. But at the same time, it's about that. A couple of the groups said about being very empathetic, and I think you link that with regards to your leaders. And I suppose what my question then leads into about, do youth services need leading or managing? And I suppose a question that would underpin that would be actually, do our leaders and do our managers actually also need to have been youth workers, or youth and community workers, or to have experience in terms of working alongside young people, to then be able to look at some of those value base that we see as what a good leader and a good manager is. I don't know if anybody wants to come in at that point, or are you happy with me to go on to the next slide?
Hi, I'm Shanika from St. Vincent.
Hi.
I would just like to add, in the interim too, we have, as a good manager and a good leader, we have to be a role model to our fellow men, because you know sometimes we are in those positions and we take the slightest of things for granted.
Good point.
And sometimes we do not look at the focus being as the persons or the individuals that we are trying to reach, helping them to achieve something. Sometimes we often think about ourselves. So in the interim too, we have to be like mentors, and it go hand in hand, because while you are mentoring, that person is looking up to you. So in a sense, you have to be the role model for them to follow. Because sometimes if you do not portray that path, it's like the persons who you are facilitating to, is that like they will lose interest, because to them they will say that you are not showing no form of example for them to follow. So as a good leader and a good manager, we have to walk in connection with both to help accomplish what we are set out to do.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's a good point. Thank you. And I think we've also got to recognise that actually being a manager or a leader can actually be sometimes can be quite hard and can be quite challenging as well for us to be able to do that. And it's been able to have that right support and that right mechanism around us to be able to continue to be a good leader or a good manager. Just going to go on to the next slide, so bear with me. Thank you for that, everybody. Pete, over to you.
Just before I move on to that, I think what a couple of the groups there have raised a really interesting point. And again, there's a lot of youth work literature out there about it, around empathy and emotional intelligence. There's a wonderful chapter in one of the management books called Walking with Nelly, where they kind of say, so, you know, don't judge a manager or leader until you've walked an hour in their shoes. And actually what we haven't really talked about, there's an ex-youth worker, now writer, called Mary Tyler, who writes about, so, you know, you can manage businesses, you can manage organizations, but when you start working with young people, there's got to be something different, and just talk about the profession of youth work having a real ethical basis. But if you were studying management and leadership in a British university over here, you'd be looking at or a course on leadership, you'd be looking at David Goleman's work on leadership styles, whether you call them traits or whatever, but he talks about, so you know, the visionary leader. Again, Sandy Adirondacks outside of that circle, really, where someone doesn't get embroiled in the day-to-day detail of sort of, you know, counting the beans, as it were, but is looking 5 years ahead, 10 years ahead, and you have a visionary 5-year plan for organizations. Someone who brings the organization, the people in the organization with them in terms of a democratic way. Obviously, people like to be asked their opinion in some kind of democracy. And again, a coaching style. I think someone was talking about bringing people with you, and someone was talking about Nelson Mandela. When he was a solicitor, he might have been good at managing, but actually he grew it through coaching into that great leader. The affiliate is quite interesting, and Goleman talks about bringing harmony to organizations. So actually it's not just that hard-nosed business sense that a manager might bring, but actually harmony in the organization. It's interesting when you apply that leadership rhetoric to working with young people about bringing harmony to lives and to the work that you do. Again, you have to command respect. You have to command people. If you are a leader, you need people to follow you, or you're not a leader by definition. And something around pace setting as well. But often, and again, it's like with the next slide, but often with this, people often think it's necessary to, if we could just go back there, it's kind of necessary to choose what kind of leader you are. But really importantly, Goleman sort of says the skill of a great leader is to be able to decide which style of leadership you need to go to the toolbox and pick out in order to deploy. So some organizations might need coaching, some youth workers in a team might need a commanding leader. They might need decisions making more democratically. So again, the more of those traits, whether you want to call them traits or styles you have in your toolbox, the better, really. And the next slide. And the same is true of Lewin's sort of management style model. This is kind of a classic. If you were studying on any management course, and particularly how to manage people rather than organizations, Lewin is attributed with these 4 styles. Some of them kind of add an extra one on, but he talks about being autocratic, democratic, consultative, or kind of laissez-faire, where again the stereotype of autocratic is, you know, quite dictatorial. The manager makes the decisions. A bit more democratic. So, you know, or in that management style, the manager would take the views of everybody, and so often called groupthink, where actually no one's really satisfied with the decision of the organization, but you move forward because everyone has agreed the direction. Consultative is as it sounds, but ultimately the manager would make the decision, does consult, but in the end, the manager is paid to make those management decisions, and that's what the consultative style about. And laissez-faire is a kind of sort of, you know, sort of leave the people to it. If your recruitment process is good and robust, you should be appointing good people to your organization, so you can take a step back and allow the team to not do what they want, but it's kind of got that reputation just to leave it alone, laissez-faire. But again, it's often misinterpreted, and particularly youth workers always think, oh, I want to be democratic, I want to be liked in my management style, I want people to think they're important to me. But what Lewin actually does write about is each of these has the right place, that actually the skill of a good manager is to be able to go to the toolbox of management and pick out the appropriate management style for any given situation that you find yourself in. And last but not least, my kind of, I was kind of joking with the person who was saying, can I actually choose two? Can I press 2 buttons of are they leader or managers? And I often used to joke with students in training for youth workers about youth workers sit on the fence. They can see both sides. They can see strengths and weaknesses in both areas. What I really like about sort of John Adair And this model is, I think you can apply it to leadership, you can apply it to management, you can apply it to youth work practice, you can apply it to youth work management. And basically the role of a good leader, a good manager, is to achieve the task, to build and maintain the staff team, and also to develop the individual. Now, obviously, the overlapping concentric circles would kind of say, ideally, your decisions and everything you do would be smack bang in the middle. So there is a good balance really between task, team and individual. But what the model allows you to do is sometimes, just say for instance, you've just recruited a brand new team, you might want to be spending more time in the team area solely to build your team, to maintain the team, in order that you can move sort of nearer to the middle. And with the task, I often say, or you say, if I was coming to the end of a 3-year funding pot between the end of our financial year, between January and March, actually we became very task orientated, and the team and the individuals would put up with that because they expected me as the manager to raise the money. They wanted me to fulfill and achieve the task in order that we could maintain the team and develop the individuals in the future. So I would commend that model to you, to think in terms of some of the practice you do maybe, or some of the work that you manage, about what elements, what projects fit where on there. That's me, I think.
Great, thank you very much for that, Pete. Appreciate that. So in terms of us now looking and we're moving forward and we're coming to the end of this webinar, just want us to start considering perhaps actually what does the future look like. So moving forward for and I say collectively us as organisations, but you know, do you want to train your workforce as managers or develop leaders for the future? And this is just something for you to take away and to discuss within your teams. What are you currently doing in terms of management and leadership progression? That may be you as you may currently be a leader or manager, or that might be you personally in terms of what are you going to do in terms of your personal management and leadership progression. But also what we need to figure out in there is actually about how do we also involve young people, and how do we work alongside young people so that we do look at that in terms of actually do we assume that all young people can be leaders or want to be leaders, probably more importantly, or actually do we look at some of those key management styles and those skills that we discussed previously in the webinar. One of the things that we talk about is what does good look like for Grenada and the other areas in terms of leadership and management. You know, what is the goal? You know, what do we see as the ultimate? We talked about before about leadership and the vision, and how do we perhaps get to that goal? We know that certainly from Grenada, they have a theory of change, and looking at that and saying, well, let's work backwards and let's see actually within that theory of change, what are our assumptions, and perhaps where can we look at some of those challenges to be able to reach that goal, and look at what does good look like, and not to be afraid to perhaps change some of those assumptions and some of those aspirations as well as we move along, because that is key in terms of what we would call co-design and true participation, but also especially about listening about what young people want as well. And finally, you know, what do you need as a community, whether that's a community of need, a community of geography, and also as an individual to achieve this goal? Because we can have the vision, we can have that theory of change, we can have what good looks like, but actually in reality, on the ground, what is it actually that we do need to be able to do that? And that certainly supports that inclusivity and that equitable status across all. So it's just something that I'd like you all to possibly think about. And if we're looking about that reflection, for you to perhaps go away, please, you know, if the connections that you've made today, but also in your teams, to take some of these questions away and start to think about that and see how you can make a difference. So again, what we said about actually how do you achieve this goal? And I'm happy to say that that is the end of the webinar. Thank you very much, everybody. If anybody has any questions, we'll take a few questions now, and at the same time we will have an evaluation, so I'll please ask if people can stay on. There'll be an evaluation link that will go into the chat. Really important, please, if you could complete that, I'd really appreciate it. But does anybody have any questions that you'd like to ask either myself or Pete, or any of the delegates that are on the webinar? Please unmute yourself and ask away.
It's Jessel from Grenada.
Hi, Jessel.
It's not a question, but I just want to advocate or to encourage the co-participants, be it leadership or management, whichever role you think is beneficial to you, that we need to consider self-care as a main priority to go forward, because engaging with youth, working with youth, it's tasking, and many a time the demands that come at you or the service you want to deliver, you can always ignore or forsake self. And if you cannot be that mentor, or if you cannot be that example, then how do you expect your teachings or your communication to reach them? Hence, we must embrace self-care to move forward. Absolutely. But the session was very meaningful, and I think it could not have been done better with the exercises and the breaking up of the group. Kudos.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that feedback. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Anybody got any other questions?
First, I want to start with saying it was a very interesting session. And it was also good to learn from the others in relation to their point of view as to how management and leaders work together and the way forward to some extent. In general speaking, I think when we are into youth work, we have to have the passion for it, so that will be like a driving force for us.
Yeah.
Because if you do not have the passion for what you do, it makes no sense you do it at all.
Absolutely.
And that is something I always encourage, especially my netballers. You are in a team and you are playing. You have to do it with sportsmanship and be a team player, so that you could always feel you are a part of going forward with it, instead of you are just doing it for the sake of. The passion should drive you to do it, so that all at the end of it all, everybody will feel a sense of accomplishment.
I think you just dropped out there in terms of when you were talking. I think it might have been a connection, but I have to say that what the point that you've made is a very valid one, and I think, as we probably all know, working alongside young people, that they know if you're a bit of a fraud, and you have to be genuine. And I think anybody who comes into youth work has to really have that value base of that they like young people, and that they have a passion to be able to support the voice of young people as well. So I think that's a very good point that you've made. Thank you. Okay. If that's it, we've put the evaluation, which is in the chat room now. If you wouldn't mind, if you click on that, that will take you straight to a form to fill in. And yes, and just to say thank you very much, everybody. Thank you so much for participating in the breakout rooms. I know that that's not for everybody, but it's really good that everybody engaged. A massive thanks to those of you who volunteered to be the spokesperson and facilitate those rooms as well. And I don't know, Pete, if you want to say any more before we finish, but just to say thank you very much. Really enjoyed meeting you all and talking with you today.
Yeah, my thanks too. It's been a pleasure.